What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. In today's episode, I'm actually going to be doing the unthinkable, and that is ranking the community days from the worst to the best. I'm going to do my absolute best to make it as objective as possible, so I want to go ahead and cover what I was actually looking at to determine it before we get into the actual list. So first things first, how good is the Pokemon? Secondly, how good is its shiny sprite? Is it something like a Pikachu where it just ends up being a little bit different? Or is it something just completely different, like something like an Ampharos, where it ends up getting just a complete opposite? Now, of course, Niantic is not going to have control over that, so it's not going to be too many points, but it's definitely going to be some factor to talk about. Up next, we're going to be taking a look at the bonus that was given for the event, and then we're going to take a look at the exclusive move and see how important it was for the Pokemon. And then finally, it's going to be a topic regarding to uniqueness. Maybe it was the first community day to ever happen, or maybe it was something like the Eevee day where it ended up being multiple days with the time windows and an extended day to be able to evolve it. There's going to be so many cool things that we will talk about, and I'll definitely do a recap of this at the end of the year. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the list. Now keep in mind, this is of course going to be my own opinion, so if you do disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments section below. But let's go ahead and get into the worst community day. And that's going to be Pikachu. I'll go ahead and explain why. So when we're talking about the Pokemon of like the best Pokemon, the worst Pokemon, I would argue that Pikachu is probably going to be one of the worst Pokemon, at least from a usability standpoint. Secondly, its shiny sprite, it doesn't contrast very much, so it was just kind of bland. And then thirdly, we've got the bonus. Now this is actually going to be a positive for Pikachu, because it's actually the only bonus like this that we've seen so far. Hopefully we will see one in the future, and that's going to be double XP. But this applied to everything during the time window. We're talking about raids, we're talking about mass evolving, just everything was double XP. So that was actually going to be one of the better rewards that we could get as a bonus. So that was at least a plus. When we're talking about the exclusive move was Surf. But to be honest, it really didn't have any type of impact. At best, it was basically going to be some type of collectible, but that's really going to be it. And when we're talking about a uniqueness factor, of course it was the first community day to ever happen, so we at least owe Pikachu for that. But I personally think a lot of people were probably overloaded with Pikachu just because you've got the Santa hat Pikachu, you've got just the sunglasses, you've got just so many different options for Pikachu, you kind of have a little bit of an overload. So having the community day didn't really feel like too special of an event. Let's go ahead and get into the number 7 spot, and that is Mareep. We'll go ahead and talk a little bit about why. So when we're talking about the importance of the Pokemon, I actually put it fairly low on the list. But when we're talking about the shiny sprite, because it was so contrasting, I personally think a lot of people really like the Ampharos being pink like that. I saw it all over the gyms, everyone was really excited about it, so it at least gets a pretty good ranking from that perspective. When we're talking about the bonus, it actually got a 1/4 egg hatching distance, so for anyone who was hatching eggs, that was going to be absolutely significant. For myself, I don't get to hatch that many. I don't want to spend a lot of money on incubators, so it didn't mean as much to me. Doesn't mean it's not important to any of you out there, but it's definitely something worth mentioning. So let's go ahead and talk about the exclusive move, and that is Dragon Pulse. But unfortunately, Dragon Pulse doesn't really do anything for Ampharos. I will talk about what it will do in the future, but I'm just saying for right now, it doesn't really help out the Pokemon from like a battle perspective. So that's going to lead into the uniqueness. This is actually going to be the first hint towards a Mega Evolution, because Mega Ampharos picks up the Dragon typing, and having the move Dragon Pulse would allow it to have a stab bonus. So who knows, it at least gets some points for that, but it is the 7th worst community day. In at the number 6 spot is Squirtle, and I'll go ahead and talk about why. So first things first, when you're talking about the Pokemon itself, Blastoise is unfortunately a very bad Pokemon. Now that's not my fault, that's definitely going to be on Niantic, so if you are a Blastoise fan, don't get mad at me. But all I'm saying is that it isn't really that great. Its shiny is pretty cool, and then when we're talking about the bonus, it's going to be that 1/4 distance again, so I gave it the same ranking as the last one. So let's go ahead and talk about the exclusive move, and that was Hydro Cannon. So at least in this regard, it did make the Pokemon better, but unfortunately it didn't propel it to the number 1 spot. But hey, then again, it's got to go against something like a Kyogre, so I don't really blame it for not taking over that number 1 spot. So when we're talking about something unique, this was really cool was in regards to the Squirtle squad being added into the game because of this community day, and the fact that we could get them from quests, and the fact that we could even get a shiny variant and it could go all the way up to Blastoise was definitely something worth talking about. But as far as just the overall community day, I think just not having a big enough impact from the moveset and then not having good enough stats, it ended up being a kind of okay community day. So up next, in at the number 5 spot is Dratini, and I'll go ahead and talk about why. So first things first, we have just the Pokemon. Now this is going to be a big deal. Dragonite is so good, I actually gave it the second best Pokemon ranking out of all of them on this list. So at least from that perspective, it's doing good. It has a really cool shiny. With it being green, that's one of my favorite colors. So it's definitely doing good so far. Then when we're talking about the bonus, once again, it gets another good bonus when we're talking about it from that ×3 catch Stardust. Stardust is king in my opinion. That is what I prioritize as the best bonus that you could get, and I can promise you a ton of people took advantage of that. So let's go ahead and talk about the exclusive move, Draco Meteor. So this opened up a completely new move to Dragonite, but at the same time, it's actually not the best move that you want to have for a dragon typing. That's Outrage, and Dragonite already had access to Outrage. So for anyone who evolved during the event, ended up getting Draco Meteor, and it's not even the best moveset. So I didn't give it as many points for that. And then when we're talking about the uniqueness, I honestly don't know what the uniqueness is for this community day. It was definitely a solid Pokemon, but beyond that, it just kind of felt like it wasn't really a special event. We are now halfway through this list. Let's go ahead and get into the number 4 spot, and that is Charmander Community Day. Let's go ahead and talk about why. So as far as the significance of the Pokemon and the shiny, I actually gave it the same ranking. It was definitely in the top half, but wasn't going to be the number 1 by any means. But no joke, having that black Charizard was so fantastic. Definitely looked incredible, and I know a lot of people were super hyped for it. But let's go ahead and talk about the bonus. It did get a really good bonus because it was the ×3 catch Stardust. Like I said, Stardust is definitely going to be king. And let's talk about the exclusive move, Blast Burn. So this was somewhat significant for the fact that it made Charmander better, but it didn't propel it into the number 1 spot, like something like a Venusaur, which we will see later on this list. So like I said, it definitely made it better, but it didn't make it the best, so it didn't have that much of meaning. Let's go ahead and get into the number 3 spot, and that's actually going to be the most recent community day that we have had, and that is the Eevee Community Day. What a day. This is something that originally I was not as excited for, but as the event started to unfold and more news came out, this event completely caught me by surprise. First things first, you have some great Pokemon like Espeon, Jolteon, Flareon, Vaporeon, sorry Umbreon, but you also have some great shinies as well. Umbreon can be included on that list, but you can also use the shinies to have access to the Gen 4, Glaceon, Leafeon, and then even the Gen 6 if you're willing to hold one out to get Sylveon. So that's going to be a massive impact on its own. So when we're talking about the bonus, the ×3 Stardust catch, absolutely magnificent, and you can bet I definitely took advantage of it. The exclusive move, on the other hand, we had a little bit of false hope that the Last Resort was going to be magnificent, but it ended up getting nerfed, so it's unfortunately not going to have as big of an impact. It's not going to really be better for any of the Pokemon, so I definitely had to give it a lower ranking. But beyond that, when we're talking about the uniqueness, for the simple fact of this being the first community day, where we've had it on multiple days, Saturday and Sunday, and then to extend the evolution time period to the day after that was a huge move on Niantic's behalf, so I definitely gave it full points for it, and like I said, it ended up making it into the top 3. Coming in at the number 2 spot, this is one that came out of left field, but when you look back on it, you realize how important it's going to be, and that is the Bulbasaur Community Day. Bulbasaur Community Day originally started out as a Pokemon that wasn't really that great. Venusaur honestly had a lot of potential, but it didn't have the moveset to be able to do it. When we're talking about the shiny looks fantastic. I personally like it. I'm a big fan of green either way though. And when we're talking about the bonus, it did have a 3 times catch XP. I don't think personally the XP matters as much as something like Stardust or just the general 2x XP for everything that the Pikachu Community Day event had. So I actually gave it the lowest ranking on this. But the fact that it still made it into the number 2 says a lot because of some of the other features. So when we're talking about the exclusive move, Frenzy Plant, this put Venusaur on the map. This was something that propelled it from like the number 5, number 6 spot all the way up to number 1 from that grass typing, which is why I actually gave it the highest ranking possible for exclusive moves. So when we're talking about the uniqueness, it's going to be the fact that it did get propelled to the number 1 spot. This was a Pokemon that no one really considered an option, and all of a sudden became number 1, which was definitely going to be one of the more impactful Community Day Pokemon events. So now we have to save the best for last, and that is the Larvitar Community Day. It has anything and everything on this list. When we're talking about the Pokemon, Tyranitar is easily the best Pokemon so far on this list. It already dominated from that dark typing, and then with this Community Day, it was able to take the number 1 spot in 2 different types, which is magnificent. So beyond that, it didn't really have that great of a shiny sprite in my opinion. It didn't contrast too much, so I actually gave it a lower ranking on that. But beyond that, the only lower ranking that it got was just having the ×3 catch XP. Like I said, that didn't really mean too much to me, just because experience doesn't matter as much as like Stardust. So beyond that, you've got the move Smackdown. Automatically gets a thumbs up, propelling it to that number 1 spot. Such a huge impact for the game. And then when we're talking about the uniqueness, it's actually going to be kind of the same thing as Venusaur, where it puts it in at the number 1 spot, not only from one spot with it already being dark, but into a new category that it was never really considered a viable option, and that was going to be from the rock typing. So anyways, this is my list of what I think is going to be the best, the worst, all of the community days that we've had so far. If you agree with my list, definitely let me know in the comment section. If you would like to switch up the order, definitely leave it below, because I will consider it for when I do the full recap on the year. But anyways, I hope you did enjoy this episode, and I will see you next time.
Hit me like a tidal wave. She's the body after shot.